In 2015, when the Office of Contract and Grant Administration, better known as OCGA, lost 6 seasoned contract and grant officers to retirement who had a combined experience of over 100 years, their in-depth institutional knowledge and expertise went right along with them. And while happy for colleagues who certainly deserve this well-earned milestone, Assistant Vice Chancellor Linda Collins knew she had to enact some radical changes to the way OCGA did business. And since then, by making incremental changes and by working intimately with her team, Linda has been spearheading an initiative to turn the ship of a decades-old practice. Necessary, but not easy. Keep listening to hear what they've done, where they're going, and how it could impact you. I'm your host, Nicole Joyce, and welcome back to another episode of the UC San Diego RA Training Program podcast, where we talk about and explore topics relating to research administration. Today's episode gives us a peek behind the curtain of the new analyst assignment model, which will impact research administrators and change the way departments and OCGA do business. We kicked things off by visiting the OCGA and OPAF's open house, where we sat down with Linda Collins, the Assistant Vice Chancellor for Research, to learn more about the changes that are happening with OCGA.
We had an open house. It was extremely busy. We had a lot of visitors from the campus community, mostly health sciences and the general campus fund managers and department business officers. Today was our kickoff of the new assignment model, the new way for OCGA of doing business. The new assignment model really changes the dynamic of our relationship with the customers and the departments to where we'll have a really one-on-one relationship between a set of analysts to a given department. Department doesn't have to figure out who they need to go to any longer like they used to. They've got a list of named individuals at all levels of the organization, those that can do standard proposal submission and those that can do a little bit more complex nonprofits and flow-throughs and those that can do the really gnarly, complex clinical trial, industry-funded type of contracts and grants. And so we're really excited. This has been a change in the making for the last 2-3 years. And while it might seem pretty simple, it's a really complex process. I've just been really proud of the teamwork within OCGA to work on a plan to put this whole new structure in place to get everybody ready. There was lots of cross-training. There was lots of change management. There was lots of buildup of enthusiasm to just completing road shows, which our folks went out to all the different departments and introduced the different teams, and that was really exciting. But today's our kickoff. The open house was to celebrate that for the customers and for our own staff, too. So we're really thrilled. Each of the teams really set up their work areas with naming conventions, with signage and decorations that really highlighted who they were serving, what part of the campus they were serving. We had little games for the customers that were coming in to follow through and meet all the team members, ask some questions, and get a star that ultimately got them a little prize at the end, which was a beer stein, but didn't have any of the fluid in it.
Unfortunately.
By the end of the day, we could have used that, but that's okay. We had our own in-house musician, Brendan, played the guitar, and he has a whole list of music and did a great job. He has a banjo, and that was lots of fun. The vibe was great. There was lots of activity. We had more people than we thought we would. And that's really great because most people had to come from on campus, from way over on campus to our little bit more remote location at Torrey Pines Center North. And it was just great. It was good morale for our staff to see all the response and to all the people and have faces and names put together, both for our staff and for the customers. And overall, it was lots of fun. I was really energized by it. I was energized watching our folks be so spontaneous and open and welcoming to the community. We jointly did this open house with OPAF, so you have the pre-award, proposal, and award end of the world that we're involved with, and you have the post-award part of the world that OPAF is involved with, so the campus got to come and see both offices, and that was really great. But for our staff, it was just the celebration of this kickoff, and I know they feel really, really excited about the change and got, the feedback from the customers that was validated that.
As we mentioned earlier, this was a joint open house between OCGA and OPAF's, the Office of Post-Award Financial Services. And Linda talked about how these two offices are strengthening their partnership.
We have an initiative between our two groups to work together and streamline some of our business processes that we have. Between the two offices, we are doing cross-training and education. When two separate organizations somewhat work in silos, it's always, sort of the starting point and the ending point. And we're putting that together and helping to make improvements that makes their life easier and makes our life easy. A lot of cross-training, education, and just team building. So that's really great too.
So obviously, OCGA is making some pretty big changes. And I wanted to hear from Linda what prompted it and how she thought it was going.
Well, the change was anticipated to be difficult. OCGA has undergone a transformation really in our overall organization. We've had 180 years of experience retire in the last 2 years. And those habits from people that have been here for a long time were going to be hard for them to break. And the change might have been difficult. So while we hate to lose that institutional experience and that knowledge, and there was great people that have left and retired and are doing great things in their own personal life, we also have a lot of new people then to come in and learn from the ground up. And they embraced this change. They weren't quite so invested in the way we used to do business. And now I think we're really primed to move forward and be successful. The change in the assignment model really allows our analysts to serve our customers for all of their needs, whereas in the past, we would be assigned by a sponsor or sponsor type. So you had one person who did NSF, and you had one person that did nonprofits, and you had another person that might have done PI last name A through M for federal flow-throughs. Now you have one team focused on neurosciences or pediatrics or the Center for Energy Research. And that really brings about and builds a relationship that we want to bring forward.
While Linda expressed the need for these changes and highlighted the primary goals, which include reducing confusion, streamlining workload, and strengthening relationships between OCGA and the departments they serve, Ross Damon, the OCGA Business Systems Manager, was ultimately the one responsible for spearheading this initiative. But with such a large and possibly daunting undertaking, I wanted to know what he viewed as the clear starting point.
It really came down to trying to understand what we do here and how we do it. The previous assignment model was very complex, and being from the outside and not being a research administrator does serve its advantages. You're naive, so you're constantly asking questions. You can play that card and you can get more information. So your natural inclination is to go out and talk to the subject matter experts. And we have a wealth of them. So we've got a ton of people here who have been doing this for 15, 20 years, and they're very good at it. And so it's easy for me to go to and talk to them about what's working well and what's not working well. And it was fairly clear within the first month or two that the way that we assign our team work was very confusing, not just internally, but also externally. So in addition to interviews with the subject matter experts internally within OCGA, we heard from departments, from various customer sat surveys and so forth about the way that we operate and how it can be confusing to them about not knowing who to go to at certain times.
I asked Ross to tell me about the specifics of the process behind this implementation.
We went live with what we're calling the department model on April 25th. This project started about a year and a half ago, and it started with a really careful, in-depth assessment of our business processes and our subject matter expertise in each of those different sponsor areas. So when we did an assessment, it was a comprehensive assessment, and we spoke to every single person in here. We talked about the volume, the demand, the frequency, the variance of that demand. We talked about the different systems and the processes. And so we were able to glean a lot of really important insights as it relates to people, systems, and processes. And that helped to drive some of the changes that we outlined in the department model. So going through that whole process, we finished up the assessment about 3 or 4 months into the project, but it took about 6 to 8 months working through various changes and training and getting to a point that we could firmly establish a go live date. And that really was the hardest point, was actually putting the mark in the sand, which is we are going to go live on this particular date. That forced us to stick to that. So putting that date in the sand and marking that as when we were actually going to go live, we knew we weren't going to be 100% fully functional or operational. We knew that there was going to be some areas of weakness. We knew that there was always some things that we're going to have to work on and address, but we felt fairly comfortable that if we can get at a reasonable level, that we would feel that going live, we'd be okay. Recognizing that things still have to get done post-live. So we went live on April 25th, and really looking back on it, it was a lot of work with, I give credit to Trevor Johnson, Sabrina Backett, Pascucci, Jennifer Leach, Brendan Daly. So a lot of people really helped on this project. And since we've gone live on April 25th, we recognize there's a lot of things that we still need to improve upon. Early indications are that it's working well, but I think we're still in the preliminary phases. I don't think that we'll realize the impact of this change until a couple months down the road.
OCGA has been doing its business the same way for a very long time. So I was curious about how the internal OCGA staff were handling having to adapt to a new business process.
I think that's probably the area that I underestimated the most on the particular project, was the change management, but more internally than externally. We did a lot of voice of the customer research. We did a lot of outreach effort, focus groups to talk about the department model, to get their early reactions to it, almost similar to concept testing where you're just getting their initial feedback and reactions to this idea and what were some of their concerns, taking that information and embedding it in our model, then going back out to the customers and doing the same thing. We established this voice of the customer model where we're just getting feedback regularly and often, and that was important. What I didn't anticipate or didn't build into the plan was necessarily the change management internally. As I mentioned, our officers have been doing what they've been doing for probably on average of 15 to 20 years is our average tenure here. We don't have a lot of turnover if you exclude retirement. So that's great. We have a lot of knowledge, a lot of expertise, and a lot of people who know how to do sponsored research. So recognizing that, it is a big shift for someone who previously that was all they did was a particular sponsor to now be responsible for a breadth of sponsors and a portfolio of sponsors to support a department. It's easy to think that when you're outside, from my perspective, to say it's just an couple additional sponsors. You'll learn it. Without being in the trenches, so to speak, it's very difficult to kind of put myself in those shoes and know exactly what they're going through. So we pushed out the go live date time and time again because we felt that there was still we weren't quite ready for it. And we had an operational readiness tracker that we were trying to gauge is where we are. And Linda Collins did a great job explaining the J-curve and where people are in change. So we did our best to be able to understand where each individual is on the change management side of it, recognizing that not everyone's going to be at the very end and ready to embrace it. But I think overwhelmingly people have been very supportive and very encouraging of this new model and have also helped out tremendously where we need them to.
So now that we know how OCGA was coping with this change, what about the departments? How are departments feeling about the new way of OCGA?
So the early reactions when we presented the idea, they liked it. So they like having a person or a team to go to. We got mixed reaction from some departments. For some of the larger departments, the medicines, the pediatrics, they were concerned that you're only going to have 3 people supporting us. And then you got some of the smaller departments that were excited because they have a team and maybe they have been lost in the shuffle in the past. But I think overall they were excited and happy about being able to have a point person of contact, someone to get a hold of, and to be able to identify who that is that's working on my proposal or award. In the past, it has been difficult with our assignment model. It's been a bit confusing that we were broken up by sponsors, departments, first letter of the alphabet. It was changing quite often. So it was really challenging for a department to find out who was handling their proposal. And sometimes a department might have 15 different people they would go to because of the portfolio of sponsors that department worked with. So early indications and early feedback when we presented the idea to the departments was they really enjoyed, or they really liked the idea of having a dedicated team that they can go to. And also, if that person was out of the office for some reason, that they could go to another person on that team. So as I mentioned, we're still only 6 weeks or so since the go live date. So I think we're still figuring out. I still think there's certain behaviors that are going to have to be overcome. I think there's habits that were obviously formed from many, many years. And that's going to be something we're going to have to work through. Some of the new officers have been asked to answer questions that they previously never had been asked before. So I think we're going through definitely a period of transition, and we probably will for another 3 to 6 months, of just trying to figure out, what does this department model mean? What does it mean for the customer? How do we interact with them? And, I think we're figuring that out as we go. But I think fortunately we have an amazing group of people here. We have a very, very strong team, and everyone is very optimistic.
Next, we spoke with Jeff Warner, one of the principal contract and grant officers responsible for implementing the changes. I started by asking Jeff how it was going so far.
I'm responsible for managing a team of 7 officers who are, in fact, the boots in the ground individuals for this shift to the new department model. We implemented this on April 25th. Prior to implementation, we went out to each of the departments and divisions. That provided us with a meeting room and time to discuss the change and discuss the pros, cons, any concerns that we had. After implementation, we've been responsible for analyzing how it's going, looking at maybe what shifts we could make to accommodate fluctuations in workload, and really trying to make as successful as possible and improve our customer service as much as possible. It's going very well. On the general campus team, the officers are transitioning very well. They're taking time to understand these new sponsors that they're working with. They're tapping into subject matter experts in that area. And really, I am confident that in the coming fiscal year, we'll forget about the previous model.
If you've ever been involved in a large-scale project, then you know that outreach is critical. And that's why Jeff and his team wanted to make sure that the departments felt ready. He told me about some of the things they did to work with departments to help them prepare.
To help the departments get ready, as you mentioned, we went out to each of the departments and discussed the model, their new officers, introduced everyone. I think it was very beneficial in that it put a face to name. You interact with a lot of people across the campus via email or over the phone. You don't have the opportunity to meet that person. And I really think it bridges the gap and helps develop a relationship between two people. We have also, with the help of Ross and his team, developed an assignment model tool so that the departments understand who they can reach out to. We've also done a lot of cross-training for the officers, which has provided them with the resources necessary to assist the departments with any sort of questions that they may have.
Additionally, Jeff told me about how departments are responding to the new OCGA analyst assignment model, and if any departments are still feeling confused, he also offered some advice.
We shifted to this new department model on April 25th. So far, from the general campus team, I have only seen positive effects of this change. I know that a lot of people are a little bit confused as to who to contact and who to work with. But once we get over those initial hurdles of identifying who they need to work with, it's all gone very well. If anyone in the department is still confused or doesn't quite understand the structure and the assignments based on this model, please feel free to reach out to me, and I'll be happy to join you at a staff meeting or come talk to you and really go through who your officers are and which sort of activity goes to which officer. If you access the OCGA link page, there is an area on the right-hand side that says staff assignments, and you pull up your officers based on the name of your department, and you also have a listing in terms of what sort of agreement type or proposal goes to which officer. So for example, if you have a federal contract, that would go to your principal contract and grant officer listed there under your department.
When I asked Jeff if he felt this new way of doing business was an improvement, he said,
Absolutely. I think there's benefits for both our office and the departments. For our office, we are able to widen the scope of each person's responsibilities, create a situation where we don't have one or two people that are subject matter experts Our whole office has experience working with various sponsor types. We also have the ability to create a much more flexible flow of work. For example, if an officer is out of the office on vacation, we have a clear backup structure, and the department is already used to working with the officer that is the backup for the person out of the office. From a departmental perspective, you know who you need to contact. You have 3 officers that you're going to interact with for incoming extramural funding. And I believe it builds a much stronger relationship. You both can anticipate each other's needs, understand each other's portfolios, and really have a more synergistic relationship.
OCGA has gone through some big changes, and those changes are currently impacting departments. Change, albeit inevitable, is never easy. It throws us onto loose footing and can create uncertainty. It forces us to grow when we are already comfortable and can slow us down when we need to be fast. But after speaking with Linda, Ross, and Jeff, it was apparent that this change was necessary for both OCGA and departments. Not only does the new analyst assignment model help OCGA manage workflow, expand expertise, and provide even better customer service more efficiently, but in the long run, it also simplifies the process for departments cradled in the aim of strengthening the relationships between OCGA officers and their RA department partners. Change is never easy, but given a little time and the right intentions, it can be good. Thanks for joining us today for the UC San Diego RA Training Program podcast. We'd also like to thank Linda Collins, Ross Damon, Jeff Warner for sitting down to talk with us. A special thanks to Brendan Daly for his original music stylings, and as always, thank you to our invaluable training assistant Francisco Mejia for his production and editing expertise. Don't forget to join us next time when we meet with Audit and Management Advisory Services, better known as AMAS, when we talk about research administrators' roles and responsibilities when it comes to external audits. Be sure to like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, and subscribe to our YouTube channel, or you can visit our website, trainra.ucsd.edu, where you can find links to our social media, sign up for our listserv, and get more information about the program.